Well, welcome everybody. I've already sent a missive to Hestia to see where they are. I didn't hear anything back from them, but I know they were suffering. They had a few medical things pop up recently in regards to their day, so we'll give them a few moments to stall for time. And while we do so, are there any questions? Does everyone remember where we were?
I
Right in the middle
recall.
of a shitstorm.
Yes. I was going to ask, do you think now would be an appropriate time for Lucio to have a remorse roll, or no?
I do, but I was also stalling on that till closer to the end of the session. With the conversation with Blue, much like Blue's conversation with Hestia, it raises the initial ideas of what they've been going through, but consciously realizing it, I was saving for more of a not quite contemplative moment. It's not an easy thing to come to grips with just how far you are removed from what you think you are in the vast course of things. That's one of the many reasons why the parallel was being made via Blue. As for Lucio's spate of income increase is tied to the blood dealers of the city, his connection with a clearly inhuman elder, as well as his connection and ties to which Lucio managed to raise, with his distance from actually diving into any of the real emotionality of his existence. He loves his sisters and has done a lot to protect them, but he hasn't really explored what that might mean in his current situation, even as many times as they've been threatened by proximity. He loves and appreciates his relationship that he has with Hestia, without realizing that in every moment when the chips were down, they kept running towards each other. They kept looking out for each other above even some of their coterie members. That's a lot to deal with. And then there's the fact that not once, but twice in his very short time as a kindred, he's entered into an agreement with forces outside of this world, not just merely kindred, but forces that are literally either never have been in the flesh or never existed in this side of the shroud. Twice he's done so willingly with no heed to what that may actually mean and what weight that's placed on him. And most glaringly is there has always since season 15 been a core presence sitting inside him alongside his entirety of his being, feeding off of what he was without him ever actually diving into figuring out what that was or how that has potentially affected everything around him. There's a lot he's been dealing with, and he hasn't really had the time to focus on it or to realize how much just the fact that he survived, how that's changed him. But that was the overarching mechanical plan behind it all. Hence the title of tonight's episode. Because Lucio, while the easiest to outline how many things have changed for him, how much that he's been dealing with, he is not the only member of the coterie that has lost a sense of themselves or tossed away a sense of themselves in negotiating the world they have been existing in. Them surviving, thriving even in a lot of cases, past doing the impossible, has a toll that they've been paying this entire time without ever really fixating and focusing on it to figure out what the fine print is. Hint at Miriam and Sophia and Hestia as well. But yeah, so that was the plan. That was a loose idea of a plan that we can extemporaneously play with in terms of timing and where it's best to fall into play.
I like this plan.
Sophia has no remorse.
Just keep piling on those stains, baby.
But you know, you gotta bet big to win big, right?
She's all in at this point. There's no backing out. And things are only going to get worse.
I'm sure to be just fine.
I'm sure everything will work out one way or the other.
One way or the other.
All right, so we are just past the hard start that we've kind of built into being the standard operating procedure. We're just a little bit past. Outside of remorse, outside of generalized questions as to where we may be heading in the epilogue of season 17, are there any other questions, suggestions, or hypotheses or corners we need to round off?
None here.
Nice. Excellent. So that being the case, with not too much more ado to be done and not too much more delaying of the enviable, inevitable, the epilogue of season 17, I'd like to first extend my thanks. And it really is I take a lot for granted with this coterie. I take a lot for granted with our crew, our core base of players. I take a lot that is remarkably exceptional with this bunch, with these characters, with this world as the base for all of the other play. And as I forget exactly where I heard it or how many times I've heard it transliterated, but there's a saying that we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old before we stop playing, because we stop playing. And that is exemplified partially in the way that we have managed to embody these characters in their moments that they've experienced. We've witnessed their highs, their lows, and every state in between. We are able to safely explore the dark and not to blow your horns too much. The skill and energies you bring to these characters makes it all far easier than it might be elsewise. And for all of the moments that we've shared thus far and all of the experiences that we've had via these characters, I thank you for your time, your effort, and the opportunity to get to know these characters and you as well. Thank you so very much. And without continuing to follow the ado down the Primrose path, I'd like to say that this is officially Soup City Sins Season 17 Epilogue. The contract's rider and other clauses. When we last left these heroes of our hearts, though heroes they may not actually be, when we last left these characters, they were at the precipice of decision. Because just because you decided to do a thing doesn't mean that's actually what's going to happen. And just because we have it in our heart, this is the path that we are heading down, doesn't mean that we don't get lost along the way. That's never been more obvious than as Lucio sits in the den of iniquity, that is the Admiral Theater. And Sophia stands at the altar, sacrifice well underway. And Hestia and Miriam stand before the seneschal of the entirety of the Camarilla's might in Chicago. The strong right hand to Prince Jackson himself, with the still warm, glowing embers of that ethereal contract that Miriam managed to enact. There are many things that had been decided and had been chosen as the path forward, without there actually ever being a full realization as to what that might mean. For some, it's all or nothing. Literally, it will either be all 100% their way, or there will be nothing that anyone can build from the ashes left. For others, it's a battle of attrition, where the more they damage the world around them, the more they damage themselves. The more they find in the scrabbling grip and grasp for power, the less of themselves they have. But altogether, the might of the coterie, their experiences and what they've managed, makes them forces to be dealt with. Whether it is the assassination or defenestration of an elder, whether it is simple Grand Theft Auto, or routing a hunter cell at its stronghold, or delving into the boundless secrets of the many worlds that abut our own, this coterie, this group of kindred, have bravely gone into the night, despite their fears, reservations, and damning the consequences all the way. And this night is no different. It has been a hell of a night. It's been a hell of a week. It has been a hell of a month. And a score of many such moments and instances. There are things needed to be said, things need to be realized, and things that need to be done. So with the pressing clutch of time being, as always, the thief of forever, we will start alphabetically with Hestia and Miriam before the Seneschal. Yes. I understand. This may not be the best moment for this, but it can't wait any longer. You see, there are a few matters that we need to discuss with our new normal going forward, and unfortunately, the tithings will begin fairly shortly, and without a representative more easily contactable for your potential, your branch of current association, this matter needs to be settled tonight.
You just say tithing?
Oh, yes.
That.
Yes.
Since when is that a thing?
Well, it has always been a thing. To better add to your knowledge of things, Regent Dusable has always taken care of the tithings for the Tremere of the city that were properly aligned with the chantry. Even when Dusable, he was not exactly a welcome member amongst the city government, he managed to make sure that the tithings for the Tremere were well taken care of. I'm not sure if you were made aware of that or not. And as far as the Toreador, that is, falls solely under the purview of Miss Triabel, the Primogen, and her harpies. As for the Hakata, until recently, that was solely the purview of the Castiglione Tories, who managed to barter and also make certain payments for the circulatory system of the city. The various blood dealers throughout the pay their tithe either through the Hakata directly or through the Blood Tsar. And up until recently, as fine upstanding members of the city, those matters were all well and good taken care of. However, with your current status, and with the Castiglione Tories seeming to be in some state of uproar as their payments have not yet quite materialized, that leaves the matter up to you all to settle tonight before moving into our new month, our new period of payment. We wouldn't like your books to go into arrears. We don't want you to fall into the red before, well, interest accrues.
Is Darnell still standing there, or did he take the hint and leave?
He had begun to back away and frowned when the mention of tolls and tithings and regent and circulatory system and blood dealers. It all but verifying his previous suspicion that Hestia and her friends, associates, and lesser members of the staff were in fact drug dealers. There's a saying to never meet your heroes, and that's what he's feeling now, even doubly so, because while, yes, he has taken her as his sister, well, a sister from another mother, he very much feels as if he's watching his hero crumble before his eyes.
She grimaces slightly, and still aware that there was the whole issue of a stampeding otherworldly presence coming their way that had somehow gone quiet.
Just like a lion crouching down before it prepares to pounce, sneaking through the underbrush closer and closer.
She's aware. That's not solved yet. Let's go to the office and we will sort this whole situation out. Unfortunately, our most direct Hakata representative is not here at the moment. So we'll have to figure this out. And she makes moves to kind of get her, Miriam, and the Seneschal kind of like into the office. And she's aware that Darnell is still standing there, but she doesn't quite know what to do about that right now, because every time she's tried to get him to forget things based on the trauma that he's viewed and been through at the shelter, it's never been really successful. Like we said that forgetful mind has to be done right away. So as she, like I said, gets the Seneschal and Miriam kind of into the office, she turns to look at Darnell, and she's gonna try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But she's gonna push, forgetful mind to try to get him to forget that last 5 to 10 minutes that he heard.
Okay, very, 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 very good. I'm taking it that with the click that you already have the system to roll. Go ahead, get that started. And while that is happening, listening to all of this, what is going on with Miriam?
Miriam is, just going to stand there, hands behind her back, just kind of like, I'm looking back and forth between these people, and this does not sound good. I'm not sure if I can interject yet, but I'm sure I will think of something when they say something of relevance to me.
Okay. Taking it all in, trying to decide where in this grand mix of fluster clucking does she actually reside. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your intelligence and either etiquette or wits plus occult?
Right.
There's a certain elasticity to the human mind. It's one of the many things that Hesha counts on when being able to reach through someone's eyes, draw close enough to them, and rewrite their past for them to help them find a moment of peace or calm in all of the violent predation that comes naturally to being kindred. As she closes the distance, reaching out to Donnell's mind, she finds that elasticity missing. There's still a moldable, malleable facet to what resides there just behind his eyes. His sense of self, his drive to help, all of those things are there, just about touchable. She can see those aspects of him in him. And as she makes contact with his mind, attempting to take these most recent moments, it's like opening someone's knee for knee surgery and realizing that all of the other surgeries have granted them a semblance of armor. The skin is hard and crusted over, the scar tissue welling up to protect the small bits of soft, sensitive area, oftentimes doing just as much harm as it does good. And this is what she finds there from the several previous instances of who and what he is being rewritten on the fly. There's only so many times you can erase the disc before it's unusable. There's only so many times you can rewrite over it before it is unusable. And there's a very real fear as Hesha meets that lack of flexibility, that lack of malleability, that lack of elasticity that resides there in the center of who Donnell is. And the question raises in her own mind, has she, over the years, managed to perhaps rewrite and overwrite his sense of being often enough through the traumatic experiences that he's had that it has in fact caused some perhaps long-ranging damage, some unbeknown secret grenade waiting to go off at the least expected moment. Has she, in her attempt to protect him from all of the horrors that exist in their world, done a horror to him? And as Hesha closes, and Sovereign, of course, quite rightfully feeling that his station is of significant enough value to enter into the office first, it dawns on Miriam that he didn't mention a need to collect the tithe from the Bahari, who were, up until recently, up until joining with this coterie, the umbrella under which she maintained her freedom and independence. If the network of tithing or blood tax was so well thought out and planned and accounted for, even by people who didn't have a seat at the big boys' table. How were the Bahari able to do so? She knows that the Lilans, the human Baham, often gave willingly, often gave until it hurt and far beyond that, often. And then it slowly dawns on her the number of parties, the discos, to which the few that she attended with any regularity, there were always faces, notable members of upper society that flitted through or partied amongst. They never quite took part in the sermons. They never quite took part in the spiritual aspects of what the discos were, but there on multiple occasions were several notable, powerful kindred amongst the worshipful, amongst the partiers and would-be enjoyers of the entertainments that the Bahari offered the city. And it's funny, while there were weekly discos, there was always a monthly grand disco. There was always a large party to which only the notables were really invited. Where it was expected you might see a member of the Primogen or a ranking member, a whip, or the like, a titled officer from various political bodies throughout the city. And as those moments settle in, we drift slightly further south and west of the shelter's coterie, haven. We drift to the Admiral. Elmira, still at a loss for where she was, where she is. The conversation cooling on Ethan as Blue offers his advice. I know where you gotta go, but perhaps you shouldn't go home, is what it boils down to. In other words, give him the opportunity to settle in amongst his newfound space, to complete the deed and bugger off. But the truth of the matter is, in this moment, in that conversation, dying, there's a portion of Lucio that hasn't quite righted everything in his head. He's just spilled a lot of his closely held truth and secrets of what he understands the world to be and what matter to him most into the ether. There's often the understanding there's a cost to doing business, that everything has a value and a price. And with the realization that it has been as long as it has been since he's reached out to his sisters, since he's had contact of them, since he's seen or contacted Arsenio, since he's seen Elijah, since... And then there's the warning from Blue. And much like he said at the beginning of the conversation, old habits die hard. He had grown accustomed to watching and keeping them or distracting them just long enough for whatever was going to happen. And try though he might to not do it, again, old habits died hard. And he did tell you not to go home. So perhaps it's a step in the right direction, even with the now open wound of Lucio's beginning to realize what has been happening around him, what he's been losing track of, what he's been losing a sense of.
So at this point, has their conversation concluded, or?
The natural dying of a pregnant pauses and words slowly dying away from burning the ears. It's not over, but it's that good old-fashioned Chicago goodbye, where you say, well, I guess I gotta be going, and then you stand up and you start patting your pockets, and then there's a few more words, and someone offers you a drink to take with you. Maybe you need a water. You got something to drink in the car, or you're gonna stop at the gas station, and then you make your way toward the door. Oh, hey, you're supposed to take this for your mom or your sister or your cousin, or you're supposed to take this for your people. So they get you a plate covered in aluminum foil, sometimes 2 or 3. And as you're sitting there thanking them for the plates, of course, something else comes up, a long lost friend or cousin that you haven't spoken with or spoken to in a while, and someone says, hey, I got him on FaceTime. Before you know it, you were supposed to leave at 7. It's now 9 o'clock, and you're well into your second bottle of whatever rock gut they had laying under the sink or above the refrigerator. You've already drunk it through all the good stuff, and now you're into the drink it because it's here stuff.
So after having spilt his guts to Blue, Lucio will say, well, I think it's about time I leave you be. There's work to be done, and not many hours left in the night to do it.
Well, here, it ain't never that much time left in the night. The night is the night, the day is the day. But then he looks over at Amara, and looks over at you. There is one thing you might be able to do. I have not had the opportunity of doing anything but being a voyeur in a very long time. I'm wondering, do you got one more favor left in you?
What did you have in mind?
Now, I don't think I'm weird or anything like that, but in her current condition, I would be able to slip inside. Her mind is washed in so much alcohol now that she wouldn't ever remember anything except for all that pleasure you managed to give her doing what it is that you did. But for me, as a pardon gift, your kiss is supposedly pleasurable and based
on... Stop. No.
Well, it'd be a pardon gift. You'd be able to give me one last little jolt of life. Might be the only time I'd have the opportunity to. Might be the only time either of us had an opportunity to really give ourselves over to that moment, to really enjoy what it is those neat little pin cushions you call teeth might do.
Blue, I like you, but I don't like you that much.
It's not about liking you, it's about liking the experience. And no offense, your senses aren't quite as refined as even my dulled ones are right now. Otherwise, you'd realize just how much pleasure you've given that poor girl that she'll never know. You've taken her to the mountaintops that she wasn't even there to experience, and she'll never be able to get there again. I'm sure she can find other things to try to fill that, but, well, you know where that path leads. I mean,
Blue, I've changed a lot in these last 2 years. I've done things that I never thought I would, but even now, there are some lines I will not cross. I'm going to end this conversation now before it gets any worse.
Oh no, it ain't gonna get no worse. It's just a thought, just a request, just a favor. Considering, well, and he looks over at her again and looks back at you. Well, being it is what it is. It's not like you even bothered to really take much of what she was.
Lucio is just going to leave a $100 bill next to her and will
The moment you
begin
cross
walking to the door.
The moment you cross the distance, the moment you draw closer to Elmira's all but completely unconscious form, the soft murmuring of her sleeping, the sound of her relatively high-pitched voice, that's not a snore. That's an exhalation. That's a Does Lucio have Bloodhound?
He does not.
Oh.
But he does have heightened senses?
Excellent. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your wits plus aspects, please? Your DC is 2.
I think I'm still at 0.
There are certain things that are fundamental. There are certain things that we do without realizing it. There are certain facts and tricks of the trade that we adapt and adopt because we do them so often. And then there are others, just as unconscious, that have grown to be part and parcel of who and what we are without us ever realizing it. As Lucio removes one of the several hundreds in his wallet, as he places it on the table nearest to Elmira's nearly unconscious form, as her breathing is light and shallow and her voice exhales, there's a very important factor of feeding that Lucio realizes that he did not do. There's a very important aspect that up until several months ago, when he initially started feeding on people, on living, that was second nature to him, until he started feeding until those have expired, until he started feeding on those who were already expiring. And then it fell out of common use. It fell out of his habitual acts. It took him a while to learn it to begin with. It took him even longer to move it out of his repertoire. And for the very longest period of time, he has only been feeding on those who have already begun expiring. So he has not been doing so. And as he looks at Elmira, in the last throes of passion, he realizes what he did not do to someone who had over-imbibed on alcohol and what that actually means in the here and now. And Blue is suddenly at his shoulder, very much the devil on his shoulder, the fallen angel, whispering truths the better to obfuscate and distract. Standing there, waiting for Lucio to say it, waiting for Lucio to realize, waiting for Lucio to understand that the sacrifice that he's made, the attunement that he's done, grants Blue considerably more options, including possessing the dying.
Did Lucio forget to lick the wound closed?
Yes. And as that thought occurs, with all of the alcohol-diluted blood leaking and spilling out of her, having been spilling out of her, as he has enjoyed the opportunity of unburdening his soul, coming to grips with what has come before, and Blue is still sitting there waiting for him to say it out loud, for him to realize
Lucio will say, "Oh shit," and will try to now lick the wound close.
As he descends to the body, the scent of blood unneeded, as alluring as it is, and realizing that even though he does not need it, he realizes what a delicacy it is to be able to partake of the alcohol poisoning her veins. He realizes that unlike the beer that he managed to sip, unlike the wine he's managed to partake of, this would give him all of the perks with none of the eventuality of needing to evacuate the system. He'd be able to really, well, have a drink, to really get the effects of it without any of the natural kindred penalties of it. And as that thought crosses his mind, as he realizes what opportunity this is and why he understands it for the opportunity it is, combined with the eventuality of what is happening right before his very eyes, the lightening of the limbs, that small difference in the weight that signifies what it signifies. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and make your remorse roll now, as you hold Elmira's cooling body, as you attempt to lick and lap the wounds close. Seconds, minutes, far too late. And speaking of far too late, past the tipping point, Sophia stands at the altar. Everything is as it should be. The sacrifice is there to be had. She has connection to nearly every living soul in the building. There's an understanding amongst the Hekata that death is not the end of anything. It's just another portion of the infinite line that life exists on. Life and death are both the same thing in the grand scheme of things. It is one singular infinite line with no beginning and no end. Energy, like science understands, can't be destroyed, merely changed. And no existing being is anything more than a conflagration of energies working in tandem towards some ineffable goal. So the question remains, does she?
Complete the ritual? Well, she certainly tries.
Excellent. Would you be so kind as to roll your either charisma cajoling the powers that be to finalize the attunement, or demand, i.e. using your manipulation, plus oblivion. Your DC with the number of sacrifices that are available is 2.
Well, all right then.
There are certain things that should not be tempted, certain things that shouldn't be dared. There's a cost to doing business. And in this moment, there's no cost that Sophia would be unwilling to pay. And as if there were several baker dozens of puppets dancing to their own tune, suddenly having their strings cut, the bodies throughout St. Jerome's drop. Right where they are, in the midst of what they are doing, they drop. There is a welling up of several megatons worth of energy upon a single soul's death. A single soul's transference from the state of living to its state of death. That energy wells up around Sophia like a grand wave of dark energy stretching out into infinity and crashes down, baptizing her in the life's blood of all of those souls snuffed out of existence. She's felt the power of the lodestone. She's held it and willed things into being that others would not have fantasized about. That is but a fraction of what she feels. A dark web reaching across the city. She can feel dark lights out there in the night to the far south. She can feel several more just east, across the border into Indiana. She feels several more north of where she presently is, and while she tries not to specifically touch them, the moment that she thinks about them, she can see the faces of those darkly glittering flames, and how she's connected to those locations temporarily, how she's able to sense them out there in the night. And not for nothing, she understands why Don Wosig was so well thought out. She understands why he felt so invincible and why he planned so thoroughly. Knowing where those lights are, where those sources of power are, she has a map of the larger pools of energy. She has a mentally burned in tattoo of how close and how far those locations of power are and how they connect to the grand spoke of the God machine that is the Shelter Coteries Haven. She understands how he was able to plot and plan and lay such a intricate web by knowing where those power sources are and how to steal little bits of that energy, how to manipulate little bits of that energy. She is aware as to how many souls have died peacefully here in St. Jerome's. She understands how many more souls have died violently here in St. Jerome's. And she understands what a live wire she's now plugged into. St. Jerome's is the vent relief. It is the stopgap to keep the shelter from exploding with the amount of power rolling and roiling through it. It's the drip to keep the pot from overflowing. And she now has full, unparalleled control to it. If Zal was able to swallow the disrespect of her servants being misused, if Zal was able to tolerate and understand why it was necessary for her act of dominance to be rebuffed, if she was able to mask and continue hiding how actually craving of power she is, this she would not be able to ignore. This is an open declaration that, much like Milwaukee, much like what her mother was doing in Milwaukee, that Sophia has officially and effectively started the civil war amongst the Hakadah here in Chicago. The old saying that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree never really appealed to Sophia. But in this moment, she understands so very much how close to the tree she actually is.
Well, let us go forth and rot more of the orchard.
You know that your sister is still living. You know your sister hasn't been granted the respect or approval to be promoted. You know that her ties and connections to all of the dark energy that is, in fact, your birthright can't be nearly as strong nor understanding as your own. Yet there's a mischievous glint twinkling at the corner of her eyes as the deal is in fact sealed, as the power solidifies into full form. The border begins to harden, and you understand that you are the unofficial pater of Chicago. It's almost as if, even without being directly connected to you by a sacrifice of your blood to her, a tithing of your blood to her, that she is tied to you and understands just in the faintest glimmering shadow of an ideal as to what just happened.
She will look at her with a creepily evil little smirk, say, well, things have just gotten much harder, much easier.
And as she opens her mouth to speak, Felix, of course, juts his way into the conversation. You do realize that you will need a place to lay your head for that is free of the initial attempts that will be coming your way. You need allies. You need friends. You need a haven that is yours, free of any previous Hakata having been there, at least any of those in the city connected with either the Castigliones or Zal. As you see, based on the priest, most have already bent the knee. Most have already understood that there's just a foregone conclusion as to who you might actually serve. And unlike the Castigliones, Zal didn't keep it just in the family. Zal didn't just utilize her ties and connections to the family specifically. She has agents out there in the dark that, well, you probably can't account for because you don't know who they might actually be. Do you have such a place, or would you like to partake of my further proof of us joined in this task?
I would be remiss to turn down your hospitality in this matter. The places that are available to me are available to all the clan. And, while we're speaking of it, what of the priest, she will say as she turns to regard him.
Wounded as he is, with the lesson already made through him, you will need those here who might spread the word of your rulership, your leadership. You will need those who can tell how gloriously vindictive and evil you might be to those who don't properly bend the knee. I'd say you take his eye and have his face. We can mend him and keep him alive, but let him spread the word that your rule is now in effect. Or you can just end him and let the silence speak for you. And he motions around you towards all of the black candles mixed amongst the votives, letting you know that this place has been not monitored.
She will move over to the priest, crouch down. I assume he's still kneeling on the ground or whatever. Crouch down in front of him, and lift his chin up with a finger, lock eyes with him, and say, "What do you say, priest? Do you wish to be my herald, or do you wish to die here? Show me you can be trusted."
No one's to be trusted, but I will do everything I can to continue living. What do you need of me?
You will continue to run this place as you have done adeptly, I am told. You will answer to me and only me for the time being. If anyone asks, you say that you served the Pater Rossellini.
Yes, of course, my pater. Sorry. Forgive my impudence.
And at that, she will reach out and take his eye.
Nothing like rewarding good behavior. To be so kind to go ahead and roll your strength and brawl. As long as you don't fail, it is a foregone conclusion. But if you score too many successes, you will do too much damage to him.
Oh, I don't think that's much of a problem. Rousing the blood here, so I have more than just blood dice.
Oh, that could be fun.
Alright, and I get hungrier. So that will make the roll. Damn it.
That at got you again.
I know. I like the other roller better, but... Oops. That's probably too many, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Well, let's willpower that then. I don't want him dead. There we go. There we go.
So tempting, so easy. Even with the hardiness given to them by the rewards of Kindred Vitae, there's only so much damage the human body can withstand. And despite the natural inclination of Kindred to believe themselves as not human, as not mortal, the ghouls very much are. They're the best of the dead and the living combined into one single being. And even still, there's only so much damage their bodies can take. It is so tempting, so tantalizing. The beast is whispering, "End him, drink him down, why not? What better way to take the eye than with something you can lick closed? Something that you can mend for him." And trembling with restraining the inherent strength of all of those dead muscles, Sophia strikes true enough to keep him wounded, eyeless, but alive.
She will, with her free hand, grab his wrist, and pull his hand up, and put his own eye in it, and gently close his fist over it.
The squish is far worse than the scream that he does not manage to withhold. The squish, the slightly schlucking as the wet mucus of the eye slides into his hand, is far worse than the scream that is coming out of his eye. Because as he realizes what's sitting in his hand, the scream doubles onto itself. You've never heard someone scream while screaming, but yes, now in this instance you have. It just goes on and on. And speaking of on and on, that thought, that realization that there is a cost to reorganizing someone into a passable, safer form of themselves is very much a weight. It is very much a gut punch out of nowhere. It is a sneak attack of one's own causing. With that sitting there before Hestia, is there a thing? Is there a thought? Is there an action that she does as she sees him meet her gaze and a tear roll down his eye? There's an unnerving quality to it because he doesn't move to daub the wetness or moisture. It's unnerving because there isn't more moisture following it. It is a resignation of sorts, an unconscious, unbidden resignation, and you see him nod. You watch him, his body respond with a yes, even though there's resistance. You see his body, without his full control, lean into your rearranging of things for him. It's the short-term memory loss that humans affect to avoid trauma, to keep from breaking down, to keep the body and mind as safe as it possibly can. And sometimes the only way to remain safe is to look away from the horror that has gotten one to where they are now.
Realizing that a complete forgetting of what just happened is not going to happen for him, what she says instead, to fill his small bit of unresistance: this is one thing I want you to never forget. I will do what I can to make things right and keep us safe. And then she turns away from him and heads into the office, not stopping to see whether he accepts it, whether he doesn't matter right now. She needs to go into that office.
And then she moves away from Donnell and moves towards the office, directly focused on moving forward into whatever this night will keep throwing at her. Miriam, with that realization as to what has been, what will be, and watching the look of resignation fall over Donnell's face, where does that place her as Hestia moves towards her, a pinkish glint of unshed tears dancing just there, just inside those lovely warm brown eyes. Sorry, I said blue, forgive me.
Miriam will quite impulsively give him a hug and a small pat on the back, and then go to the office.
Inside the office, as per the arrogance that only kindred can have, as per the arrogance that only the right hand to the most powerful kindred in the city might feel is their right, Sovereign is settled at the desk. He's opened up the portfolio in front of him, and there's a old-fashioned retractable pen that is clearly older than most of the eldest members in this building are. He clicks it once, then twice, and yes, and he pushes his glasses up his nose. So down to the matter of business. Yes. So I'm thinking, based on your support in the government, as it were, as a way to keep from maximizing the interest that would accrue, of course, you allow 2 feedings per week for notable members as per assigned to the city government, which will cover yourself personally. And if you would like to cover the entirety of your coterie, and I believe that you guys are still at 4 members currently, correct?
Yep.
Excellent. So that brings us to a grand total of 2.5 feedings per week among your current herd here. I've taken the liberties of doing a census of the number of beds that you currently operate and maintain in perpetuity of sorts. Your census is strangely high. You are always totaling somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300 members of the indigent transient members of the city kind population, and even with the outcry of the neighborhoods, you manage to keep your numbers fairly high. So that being the case with your largesse, that would be 2.5 feedings per week with a guaranteed return of investment so long as none of the donors taken or otherwise misplaced would permanently disappear. Does that sound amenable for the total current day out of pocket cost for your members of your Hakata coterie here?
She spends a moment getting herself in check. Because again, she is aware that there is that looming danger just over their shoulder. And the danger in front of them, they're very much stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. She can't mouth off. As much as she would like to tell him where to fucking go, she is not going to. And looks at Miriam. You get what he's asking for, right? I just want to make sure that you are well aware, as part of this coterie, that you are understanding what this being is sitting here asking us to do.
So, I just want to be clear about what you were saying earlier about the Bahari. Are there still those discos going on? Or have they completely just gone down to, I think it was Gary?
Yeah, Gary was the closest place where the Bahari are able to practice openly as of yet. However, there have been rumors and murmurs of things changing in the south suburbs. If that is the case, that means that there will eventually be more discos in the area, though it's hard to really imagine Erzuli giving up the glitz and glam of Chicago for a place as country and backwaters, the south suburbs. Doesn't really add up. But any port in the storm and any hope in the dark.
She will look at Hestia and then look back at the Seneschal. And what if other arrangements could be made? What would you be willing to accept?
Oh, negotiations. Well, that is not quite unprecedented. So, with the 2.5 feedings per week as expected to be donated, the shelter, of course, is the closest, and with such a large ass easily at hand, I'm not sure what you might be able to offer to best approximate that, because, well, there is safety upon feeding indoors, and these members of society are easily forgotten, just in case there is any unfortunate happenstance. Are you
forgotten by who? I am responsible for every one of the lives that crosses the doorway, and I take responsibility for their lives. And they stay here. They look to me for safety, and you would just write that off and say, well, if somebody gets out of hand and oops happens, I'm just supposed to look the other way and not care about the life that I took responsibility for. To you, they're just
No,
cattle.
no. That is
Dregs.
not what entirely that I am saying. I'm sorry, but you're getting quite emotional in regards to these cast off, these these lesser individuals of the kind population. However, what's expected in that point, of course, there would be recompense made to you to the loss of a potential donor. It's much like the kind that they are, you'd be recompensed for such a thing, and actions will be taken as per necessary by the bylaws of the city, and your your clan affiliations, as a whole. The Hakata, I understand, operate much the same way as we do, but with their own nebulous, lesser, more criminal nature and minded operations. After all, that one would not expect much more from a Giovanni derivative that is the Hakata currently. But if something were to happen, of course, recompense could be made as per their worth to society and their value to you. But yes, they are the lost. No one of the majority of the population cares about these individuals. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and he flips a page, in the last 3 months, there have been 16 noise complaints directly targeting this particular shelter. There have been, in scans down the line, 24 reports of vandalism and theft, with individuals heading towards this location or entering into this. And he flips the page. And as little as 3 months ago, there were several known local terrorists dragged out of here by the police. And he flips the page further. There have been 14 medical emergency necessitating light and sound of ambulances heading to this area. He flips the page again. And there has been up until 2 months ago, there was a standing surveillance dragnet over the area due to the operations of this particular institution. If we were to not heed the advice of several members of the government and turn as blind an eye as we could to these, this would be overwhelmingly, instead of 2.5 feedings per week. That's clearly, he quickly does the addition with the pen, marking down hash marks. That would bring you to a total arrears of 79 feedings necessary just to square away this already outstanding debt of issues not quite dealt with by you and your coterie. While Critias speaks relatively highly of this group of kindred, and Damien, of course, supports his sire, and for some strange reason the prince keeps listening to them, there are members of the government that find your behaviors thus far as a threat to the city. Your actions thus far in allowing these instances to pile up to draw attention could very well, in and of themselves, have been cause for several other censures. So forgive me.
Will place a hand gently on Hestia's shoulder and lean forward. But that doesn't address alternative plans.
No, it does not. You haven't quite offered anything that might mitigate either what has already occurred or the necessary 2.5 feedings per week. So if you are able to find a suitably valuable alternative that would be just as convenient for those members of the city that may be straying a little far from the center of business, then I would more than like to hear such an opportunity. After all, the quality of the blood, despite its container, is a varied and wonderful thing. There are many quite enjoyable vintages floating throughout. I am one of the few who have the ability to parse and understand the potential value of the lost vintages that may be circulating through here. While they may not appeal to my particular palate, but they are definitely notable. It's definitely a potential enjoyable scavenger hunt amongst these scavengers of society.
Variable. Smile. Oh, so very charmingly. What you're asking, we've never actually done ourselves. We don't feed off of people here who are in need. But I seem to recall some of the echelons familiar with the discos.
Yes, it is a shame that those have come to an end. And unfortunately, unlike you and your coterie, the Bahari don't have the opportunity of having supporters amongst the city government. And with the war still being very much a matter of a fait accompli yet unfinished, with Urzuli being on the run and hiding from the long arm of the law, they are unable to be anything more than, well, spoils of war if they are in fact found. Are you claiming that there is another Lilin cell amongst the city? Would you happen to know where they might be? That might forestall your payment for at least 2 months.
Couldn't say that I know where there's a cell. I might be able to make some inquiries. I am an artist after all.
Yes, and there is a strange overlap between the artiste and the clan of the Rose. It does attract a certain intersection of Bahari influences. It's quite curious, one would say. Luckily, Miss Treebell has proven herself to be a loyal, upstanding member of the Tower, and despite Mr. Stryker's penchant for the over-dramatic, he himself is, in fact, quite a loyal supporter. A believer, if you will. And, well, yes, and 2.5 is an extraordinarily low tithing, but as we are only solely concerning your particular coterie, a former hound and newly turned Akata, it is as large of a discount as I might be able to offer, considering, even with the support of your supporters on the government, that you are, in fact, very, very far in arrears.
Very well, as he gets found. I'm not that kind of artist, and she will, move ever so slightly to where her tattoos are quite pronounced.
Oh, I thought that was scarring. I wasn't going to point out your damaged flesh, but I could see that as one of the many things that the modern children of the world find appreciable, though I'm not quite sure how you might trade such artwork. There's no real way to assign a value for something such as that. It's
She
worn.
laughed softly at his words. But you see, it means that they know who I am. I can find them.
So are you offering an abeyance of your currently outstanding debt so that you might, even though you are under the Hakata largesse, operate as a agent pro tem of the hounds to suss out the enemies of the state of that are the Bahari?
I can't promise that I can find them, but I can find the humans they used to feed on. And she will smile.
Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll?
Let's go.
Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your charisma and subterfuge? It will be contested, and roll as high as you possibly can. Sovereigns no fool, and it's very binary in terms of doing business. with Hestia biting her tongue and doing her best to swallow back her beast and her natural emotive response to hearing such tropey, kindred biases against the living. Will she choose to interact, or will she continue glaring a hole through Sovereign?
I think she's getting kind of what Miriam's putting down, kind of this whole, what if we could restart the disco in a smaller smaller vein, I guess. And that's exactly what she's going to say. While I very much hate what would happen if we let feedings happen here. At the same time, what Miriam is stating, I've met sort of humankind that would seek such feedings to be happening upon them. Maybe if we gave them a place to gather, a small once a month meeting of sorts to connect them with willing experiences, that would take care of our payments. Which she can do, because they have seemed to seek her out before I've seen it.
So, that being the case, instead of a +1, would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll? Because you are speaking from what you honestly believe, or you're trying to shade the truth into the best presented version?
Oh, she honestly believes that Miriam could draw those sorts of people to her, and they could flip it and turn it into something beneficial for both those humans who are seeking their destruction and the shelter not having to give up any of its people specifically.
Excellent. Would you be so kind? Would you be so kind to go ahead and roll your charisma plus subterfuge as well? Or persuasion, whichever is higher for you. Okay, that being the case, that gives your total a +2 over. So I will roll 2 dice for Mr. Sovereign, and they both must come back successful. And we will see, is fate on your side of the coterie, having you pull off yet again another impossible action of trading a untold number of potential lives to protect the sanctity, security of the shelter, or does he take offense at the attempt to sway him from his purpose and cause for the evening? Like an iceberg cracking, you can hear it from miles away. Like the walls of Jericho that have been sung about in several hundred different gospel hymns, you can see the miracle taking effect from a distance, though there's no reason why the implied promise of the opportunity of feeding kindred through mass gatherings of humans should work. It is very much a threat to the masquerade, which is one of the many reasons why they were able to marshal forces and stage the war against the Bahari to begin with. Yet, clearly, there is something about the opportunity of having as many of your particular type of feedings that tempts him, that sways him. The combined effort of Miriam and Heshep managed to reach inside Sovereign's chest and starting the heart therein. The passions for feeding, or at least feeding on his particular type of poison, is enough to sway the bean counter. It is enough to get the robot to feel. It is enough to break through the wall of ice around his being. And as the light glints off of his glasses, he doesn't smile per se, but you both know you've won him over because he sits the pen down and folds his fingers one into the next. So exactly, how might this potential disco work if things were to operate under the best of practices?
Easiest way would be as a shelter to offer anonymous meetings, i.e. Alcoholics Anonymous or Drugs Anonymous or such like that, but target specific types of people so that those people are the ones that show up for the meetings. Leaving it on a much more intimate, smaller scale, a little bit more controllable, less likely to possibly break any sort of secrecy. It basically would be more contained and only offered through the shelter. We wouldn't hold it anywhere else, and only that once a month meeting. Once the ball was rolling, once the people knew where to come, it would become easier because then word would get out amongst them specifically.
As the plan shapes up, and began regaling him with details in the approximized plan of what might be lucrative. As one thing begins, another ends. The Admiral is a place that has seen no small amount of its own death, either directly and on premises or through the several different strains of product that have flowed in and out of this place. Liquid or powder or pill or injected or an emulsion or solution or any number of ways to ingest and imbibe, and the deaths that they've caused still falls under the purview of the responsibility of the Admiral. Whether it's getting the girls just enough go juice to get through their own feelings, or to help them self-medicate to get through the night, or to get a party going, or to roofie a guest, or to any number of and all number of things that have happened under his roof. Lucio can't count the number of times that one missing person case has had him either directly or through Elijah and Elijah's cop buddies investigating several such places around the city. There's an inordinate number of places where one can go physically to have the illusion of love, whether it's just physical love or it's more, which of all of the many drugs and addictive agents, it's the worst. Save what Lucio is currently feeling and exploring as the light disappears from Elmira's eyes. young, attractive girl, college-aged, in a place like this is a story that's been told hundreds of times before. Oh, I'm only working my way through medical school, and more oftentimes than not, that exactly is the case. The women are looking for an opportunity, the men are looking for hope, and all of them come together, whether they're working as dancers and entertainers or behind the bar or as a door staff. Everyone has a reason for willing to enter into this pit of depravity and iniquity, for engage in the idea of taking on the title of sex work and all of those connotations that they have against it or for it. Hope is the worst of the poisons offered here. Hope is, well, hope. And Lucio watches as that hope disappears from her gaze. Having licked the wounds closed, the blood loss having already tipped the point of no return, he stays with her as her body completely cools. He stays with her as he realizes that, luckily for her, she really didn't eat much. She was clearly watching what she ate, because as the body loosens its hold on life, there's not much waste there. And remembering his own expiration, he knows how messy that could be, especially when one's eating stakeout food. But in this moment, it's Lucio and this college-age woman, this college-age, as Blue says, girl, who does not meet the definition of beauty for his long dead epoch of history. But for Lucio, it would not be unfair, and it is very likely nearly impossible for him not to connect the dots between him ending a dark-haired college-age girl's life and other such beings throughout his life.
Lucio just sits there in silence, realizing what he's done, kneeling beside the body.
Oh, goddamn, you got cold, motherfucker. You couldn't even pick her up off a little bit of warmth that she faded away. You done stole her life. Might as well offer a good bow on the way out. Now, as he says this, he's crouched directly across the body from you, but his gaze is focused on the ceiling above you. Him purposely drawing your attention to the body there before you. But also him avoiding looking at it directly.
Well, are you satisfied? You've got your body now.
Yeah, but ain't nothing there to do now. I'm stronger than I was, but motherfucker, I did ask you before she completely crossed over whether I could just slip in and you do your magic. We both get something out of this. Now, ain't nothing there but a pile of cold meat. I know, but ain't nothing wrong with leftovers, but it makes things such as slipping inside considerably more motherfucking difficult than it needs to be. Hell, if I step inside now, there's a good chance that I might expire permanently. Shit. Why you motherfuckers don't never listen to after the shit's already done hit the fan? We could have both had a moment there. We could have shared some things. I've seen it done. That's how Mama Cass made her big escape on the old man before y'all sent her screaming off to hell. Slipping inside, enjoying the sensation Yeah, well, I don't know if you know this or not, but eventually those big Goombas, those big hairy motherfuckers gonna come in here and start looking around, making sure that you doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is either sleep and the motherfucker with your wallet wide open in her hands, or her taking care of business to make sure that you go home with a story to tell your friends.
And once again, I find myself fucking everything up. Lucio gets up. He shuts her eyes if they weren't already shut, and just whispers, "I'm sorry," to her.
This close to death is not a first for Lucio. This close to a cooling corpse is nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, it's so far within the ordinary that outside of the cause of her death, this might as well be just another average everyday Thursday or Tuesday. Some middle of the week, not early enough to be hump day, because at least they have a camo in an old commercial, or late enough in the week where it's just past hump day and not quite Friday. It's a normal, out of the way day, save for that pit in the center of his being, that weight on his shoulders, and the real understanding that this was his doing. And you hope that if anything were to happen to your sister, at least whatever monster was there, would offer their grief and their regret to her as cause for doing any harm to her. Because dark hair, college aged, smarter than she should be, yet willing to associate with something and things that are clearly the wrong side of the light. This very much reminds you of Faye and Stella and their friends at that party where you, or your anger, and then you hear the hand on the latch. Hey, Hey,
Thinking quickly, Lucio will say, she's sleeping now. She's sleeping it off now. And afterwards realize how terrible that lie is.
So as the door begins to open, what is it that Lucio does? And yes, Blue is only silent because he is literally rubbing his hands, scrubbing his face with his ghostly hands at Lucio's lie. Oh, don't worry, she's asleep. Have you never been inside the motherfucking strip club? What the fuck? Oh my god, this motherfucker.
This ain't good. Lucio is going to instinctively, when the guy, oh god, okay. So, as soon as he opens the door, Lucio is going to put himself as close to the door as possible, trying to block line of sight, and will utilize his fancy new power to tell the guard to go away. I believe mesmerize, right?
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Do you remember the dice that you need to roll?
I think it's manipulation and dominate.
It is. Good memory. You do have to roll for your rouse and make it happen.
That's right. This is not a free power. I do not get hungrier.
You tap into the strength of the beast, and it does not demand a toll. That is interesting. In your grief, you don't quite process it that simply, but it's almost as if your beast is taking pity on you in this moment, where the world seems heavier and bleaker than it needs to. As you step into the doorway, as the door creaks and eases open, like the monster from underneath your bed slowly crawling its way out, you catch the bouncer's eyes. Now, exactly what is it that you tell?
He says, turn around and walk away.
Leaving the door where it is with you standing in the middle of it, he takes his hand off and begins about facing and walking away, the most quizzical look on his face as he does so. He's looking at his feet and twisting a little bit as he walks away, looking back at the door, then down at his feet, then at the room around him as if he can't believe what's happening.
And then Lucio, taken a little bit aback that this actually worked, since this is the first time he's ever done something like this, he's going to quickly refocus himself, and then he's gonna leave the room, shut the door behind him, head for the exit, and as he's heading for the exit, he's gonna make a quick pass by that guard and also say, oh, by the way, forget, and use cloud memory.
Okay. That is free.
This is the getaway of the century, folks.
Roll that lovely charisma plus dominate footage for me there. Let's see how well you managed to get to this guy. You put not just the whammy, but the double whammy on him. There's no way that it should be this easy. The moldable putty that is the human mind still has a certain stiffness to it, a certain resistance. All of the books you've read on mesmerism as a youth, when you watch that Harry Houdini movie with that old actor, Curtis, Tony, or Anthony Kurtfeld, or whatever his name was, and that show with the guy with the big nose, you watch that Houdini show, and you've watched several others because, they're entertaining. They remind you of your youth, sitting on the floor in front of the tube TV with your mom and dad as, well, your dad picked a movie for you all to watch. And yet, here it is, the springy, semi-solid stuff that is his mind immediately snaps into the shape of your demand. And as you walk away, all but sweating Pate out of nervousness, because there's no way that should have worked, no way it should have happened, you hear the worst thing you could possibly hear. Hey, get that motherfucker! I mean, get that guy! And you realize that you're the only one that can hear it, as Blue all but busts a gut as you go streaking out of the building.
Wait, are they looking for me?
If they could hear Blue, they would. But luckily, it's just Blue.
Oh, God. Oh, my... My heart skipped a beat there, storyteller.
Well, you know, Blue's gonna blue.
Hashtag blue is a dick.
Hey, don't be stealing my hashtag.
Okay, with that in mind, Lucio is going to quietly, nonchalantly as he can make everyone believe, walk out the door and get into the car and drive away and feel bad about this whole experience the whole way he's driving.
What the hour of the evening? Where is it that he might be driving to?
Back to the shelter, because that's what he promised Hestia he would do.
Excellent. And as he's making his way downtown, walking fast, we shift.
He's making his way downtown, hauling ass, getting the fuck out of here.
We shift our gaze to Sophia. There's literally no other way to properly encapsulate what it is that she's done. In one night, she's ruined one of Zal's property and destroyed several others. And one night, she's struck out at the last vestiges of the Castiglione Empire by attempting to assassinate their new head. In one night, she's doubled down on her insult to Zal and stolen the throne. She hasn't so much as sat upon someone else's throne. What she's effectively done is lift it up and carry it away while recording herself making sweet, gentle love to the fact that it is, in fact, her throne. The only way to, according to the rules of the game, the rules of the family, to steal or unattune a person's hold on a thing is to beat them and have them gift the property to you. They have to sign it over of sorts. And to say that Sophia has no intentions of capitulating would be one of the most aggrandizing understatements possible. Sophia, her new adjutant, Felix Calixte, and her sister head down to the vehicle, the stretch SUV, the mo that they arrived in, and ease away from St. Jerome's. Its power vested solely in her being the vent, the stopgap of relief for the hub of the Midwestern's most powerful god machine in her control. The sign of leadership for the Hecata of Chicago, resting in her pocketbook. Is there one other stop or one other action she would make on the way to Felix's domain in the south suburbs?
Well, she might check in at the shelter. It's like right down the street even.
It is. Well, that makes things a little easier. It is. Here, we'll take a quick respite, and we'll be right back. Let's say 27 after.
It's planned.
Welcome back, guys. How we doing?
Hello.
As Lucio and Sophia arrive back at the shelter, and Miriam and Hestia are putting forth the devil's deal to Sovereign. As they arrive nearly very close upon one another, is there anything that Lucio and Sophia are conversing about? Lucio sees Sophia arriving with the dark-skinned member of the clergy from the south suburbs and her sister in a new SUV limousine. They see Lucio arrive looking a little worse for wear, as if he, well, let's be perfectly honest, outplayed the devil and got his golden fiddle.
I take it you had a productive evening?
Oh, quite. Very, very productive.
And I don't suppose you care to elaborate any further?
If I might, says Felix.
Certainly.
Isn't this man part of your cabinet? Isn't he part of your staff?
I wouldn't say staff so much. They're indebted to me.
So he's your man. Even a servant to a king is above the servant to the scullery maid, or the servant to the cook, or the servant to the local carpenter. As your man, and you are now the pater of the Chicagoland area, perhaps his elevated position should be related to him so that he might be wary of those who might seek his blood as counterpoint to your usurpation.
Hater? Wait.
Yes.
You made it official?
There are still forms to fill out, T's to be crossed, I's to be dotted. But for all intents and purposes, I am Pater of Chicago. There will be those who disagree. As my friend Felix has pointed out, you might want to be aware in case they strike at you.
It's been an hour and... Actually, has it been like an hour and a half or 2 hours since we last saw her?
At this point, with the drive back, roughly about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
It's been a little over 2 hours. How in God's name did you make that happen that quickly?
Well, you act as if this has not been in the offing for a while now.
Yes,
You
but...
move the piece here, you move the piece there. Eventually, the game is won.
You know what? I'm not going to press any further since you're not interested in elaborating.
Well, if you must know, remember the night your unlives changed when you were forcefully ejected from your previous organization that you served.
When we killed...
Yes, when you killed. I now am in control of that organization.
I see. Well, congratulations. Job well done.
But I'm sure the woman whose men we killed earlier will have some objections to this.
And there it is, yet again. Much like Blue had been saying the last few nights, how many people, how many living, existing souls you've all sent to the other side. And as much as you dislike the simplification of Don Wojcik, using the enemy of his enemies, binding them together inch by inch closer to himself, you are sure that your actions have, well, calling it what it is, sent more fodder for his army of the dead. You realize that your faces have been the last things that quite a few individuals have ever seen, if they've managed even that. And speaking of seeing one's death, seeing the end of things, Sovereign listens with the mind of someone who's used to reading legalese. He listens as if he's able to read the various lines of this particular contract, noting them down for posterity should the matter need to be re-evaluated later. So, just to make sure that I'm right, you're saying that even as you would prefer no individual to feed on your herd of kind here, of these lost, unfortunate souls, you would arrange for a feeding of other individuals who are not, or may not have been, the lesser members of society, not the down and out, not the discarded or forgotten that are these transient and less than pitiable souls who exist here, but instead may be in fact members of the remnant rogue Bahari organization and belief system. Individuals who are from any number of walk of life, doctors, lawyers, judges, police officers, individuals who actually contribute to society. Is that what exactly I'm hearing here? That you're willing to trade those lives for these?
Miriam will just nod. The former associates, humans, they enjoy a certain amount of pain or degradation, some of them. I've been in control all day. Now I want someone to take control of me mentality.
I see. And, Miss Green, as a former member and standing of the Tremere Chantry, is this to your liking? I see that. Not to belabor a point more succinctly, but your resistance towards paying your tithing with your herd here, you're able to condone such a trade, and if you are, that's more than acceptable. I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. And as he gets that out, as he closes his opening argumentation, the door to the office opens. Lucio and Sophia there, in the company of Felix Calixte and Victoria, Sophia's newly earned ghoul. Now, there are several things that one does not expect upon returning home, or to the semblance of home that the shelter is. And that's the prince's strong right hand sitting at the desk with Miriam and Hestia's back to the door in the seats as if they are guests to their own office. On the table between them, on the desk between them, is an open portfolio with several notes having been made, several accountings and accumulation of numbers. And Sovereign is sitting with his hands folded together on the desk between them, as if they are in the principal's office. He clears his throat, looking toward the door. And you all?
The difference is that the people that we would be inviting know why they are here and want this sort of interaction. They look for it, they crave it. It would be an outlet for them, whereas it takes care of this whole situation instead of using somebody who might feel like they don't have a choice. These people have a choice. That's the difference.
Mr. Seneschal Sovereign, was it?
Yes, hi. Hello there, Miss Rossi. You've just in time. We were addressing this particular coteries past due balances of tithings for the city. Without the proper representation of the Peter of the Hakata, we are speaking with the most elevated members.
Well, aren't you very fortunate, for I am now Peter Rossellini.
Excellent. So all that's necessary on your part is to co-sign their already agreed upon repayment of the tithing due, and we can commence with the next opportune moment for proper payment, the exchange of funding, as it were.
And what deal has been struck exactly?
He motions, finally unclasping his hands towards Miriam and Sophia to take over this portion.
We were going to have to give them 10 feedings a month of the
2.5 feedings per week.
2.5 feedings per week of the people that stay here at the shelter and trust me with their lives. We offered instead to hold meetings once a month for willing participants through Miriam's connection to the Willens, inviting them here so that their needs are met and our payment is met.
It seems I have entered while negotiation is afoot, so do not let me interfere.
Hess took the fact that she said Peter, and she twitched for a minute, but again, not wanting to look weak to the Seneschal, Phil keeps that business focus. Well, then, if you are in agreement to this and we can make it happen, then it seems we are all in order, unless anybody has any objections. She looks towards Lucio.
None.
Looking back to the Seneschal. Well then, that seems we are solved. Is there something we would have to sign, or is it all?
Yes, of course. The only value that actually matters amongst us, and with that, he takes his pen, stabs it into his thumb, looking to you all as he does so, and holds it up, and then passes the pen to each of you. All right here and right here when you have the opportunity. And when he says right here, he motions to places on the page where you all are to poke and place your thumb.
Realizing exactly what sort of deal with the devil this is, she still pretty much pokes her thumb and imprints it where it needs to be, because it's one less fight to have to worry about at the moment. And hands the pen to Miriam.
Miriam will do the same.
Peter Rossi and
Rosaline. Yes.
oh, beg my pardon. I'm truly sorry about that. I did not realize that Rossi was short for Rossellini. Well, Peter Rossellini right here, and Mr. Darcy.
Lucio will take the pen and do as instructed.
Sophia will look over what she is exactly signing.
You all agreed to the repayment of 2.5 feedings per week from the gathered bodies of the extended living Bahari members residing in the city.
So no chicanery or tricky language or anything. It's just straightforward.
It is straightforward. It's one of the few aspects of Sovereign that even his most ardent actual enemies appreciate.
Okay, she will sign it. Or prick her thumb and press it on the paper, as it were.
Very good, very good. And he takes his thumb and signs his witness. And as he closes the page, taking the pen back, gives it a quick flick of his tongue back inside of his jacket. Well, the night grows wane. I will leave you all to this. Your first payment, of course, due upon the falling of the first full moon, and every week thereon, unless, of course, you arrange for one massive payment to be arranged at your leisure the very first night after the full moon, which gives you approximately, has bought you an additional 14 days to make your first act of repayment as the Hakata contingent for Chicago. Thank you and welcome to Chicago. It's good to do business with you all, and I look forward to many further lucrative opportunities with our newfound relationship with the Hakata of Chicago. No. And he turns to the door and begins easing past Sophia and Lucio and Felix Calixte and...
Yes, I may, Seneschal, have but a moment of your time.
Yes, hi. Of course.
This may be a matter better suited for the Primogen and the, perhaps the Prince himself. But, I would like to discuss the fate of those assembled in the room, as perhaps removing them from underneath my stewardship. Perhaps restoring them to your organization, even.
Oh, really?
Well, it seems to me the crime that they are most egregiously committed is no crime at all in the eyes of the Akata, who would be the only ones who would take offense.
That is an interesting idea to put forth. In the spirit of commerce and neighborly relations, let's look at that matter more closely. There actually is, in 2 nights, an official gathering of the government at the Harold Washington. There's a matter of judgment to be passed upon, one of their members' childer. She has managed to withstand the current level of interrogation, and, Dusable, ever grappling for power, wishes to have the official leave to utilize extreme measures. Perhaps that would be the best time to speak on the status of this particular coterie? It would require some renegotiation of the amount due and what steps to take moving forward.
Well, it seems that my visit to this would be threefold. I assume you speak of Vivi.
Yes, Dizzy's child, or shame. It's a wonder what those Bruja get up to. They're almost as bad as the Gangrel these days.
It seems that we may still hold grievance against her. Perhaps we can discuss that during the hearing.
That would be most agreeable. There is.
Thank you for your time, Seneschal. I will not keep you any longer.
No, of course. Everything's, There is one small question. Might I ask, neighbor to neighbor, one small thing. The Bahari formerly had a small bit of a domain they call their own, held under one of their lieutenant officers. I forget what they call them, mother, auntie, sister's cousin's wife, or whatever it was, the title that they had. Mama Walde, I believe, was the name. Some thin-blooded Kate of sort, I believe. Were they the reason you all were aware of the happenings of the Bahari? No, never mind. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you all there with your full Kata contingent and perhaps a joining of our aims and goals. I bid you all a lovely evening.
And you as well, Seneschal.
Thank you. You're far too kind. And he leaves, pulling the door closed behind him.
That should be most advantageous. See, I am not all bad. Felix, shall we?
Of course. I believe that as potential no longer members of the Pater staff, I hope you all have as much luck as you deserve. Good evening. And he looks at Hestia as he says this, and then meets Lucio and finally Miriam's gaze. Following behind Sophia as she leaves with her sister leading the way, guarding her path even against these homeless and transient members of society. You'll have the opportunity in moments to realize what has been negotiated not once but twice this evening. You swayed the prince's administrator. You negotiated a price that manages to cost you nothing and potentially gain you all further support, as the war with the Bahari, the war against the Bahari, or more specifically the war you all caused on and against the Bahari, has not completely died away. Your stance in offering their members, their believers, goes a long way to perhaps moving you in the same line of thought that makes you acceptable to the bulk of the tower. As you all are left alone, is there any information you are sharing with one another in this moment, with the weight suddenly lifted off of your shoulders as regards to Sovereign?
I swear that man is a fucking cockroach.
Miriam just let out a deep breath. Like, well, now we need to figure out how I know about the Bahari.
That's not the only problem we have sitting over us right now. Did you forget our grumbly friend? And she very carefully takes the top bowl off the other bowl.
Oh, yeah.
was kind of focused on not making sure that none of our people downstairs got bit.
Yeah. Did anybody else hear her say Pater? Or was that just
Yeah. No.
Yes. She has made it official.
They're like kind of painting a target on us, but we already had a target on us, so it's just a bigger target, but then now she wants to get rid of us, quote unquote? Or turn us back over to the tower and have us be our own people again. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
The question is, if this contract was negotiated on behalf of Hecata, and we're not part of the Hecata entourage anymore, what does that do to this contract?
He did say it would need to be renegotiated.
Probably meaning she's either going to have to make her own deal, or we are going to have to find something else to offer, which I don't want to have to do. Anyway, your side quest, did it help? Are you feeling any better?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, that's not ominous at all.
Actually,
Exactly.
I stand corrected. There is one thing Blue mentioned, which may be concerning. Whatever you did, pointing to Miriam, is attracting something that is bad business for us. I don't know what it is, but
Hestia had a
Blue
theory.
was terrified.
The reason Blue is terrified because the one thing that we tried to keep away from him his whole time, the one thing we made a deal with to protect Blue, has now got the rest of its power from the other side.
Forcipulus?
Yep.
That is the working theory. And Miriam will just shrug her shoulders like, I don't even know who that is.
Wait, so is it
But
another Forcipulus, or is it Forcipulus complete?
Eh?
Like,
the problem is, we got the smarter but diminished version of Forcipulus that took over the body and became human-esque. That wasn't all of it. It had to leave a part of itself on the other side to fit into that body. And it's been living in that body for months. So what happens when you leave a dog with separation anxiety alone for months? You lose your shit a bit. They get destructive. And then now you've opened a door to that Rottweiler and let it run through. And it has a protective streak for Miriam.
oh Christ. Well then,
And to put the cherry on top of all that, Darnell now thinks we are fucking drug dealers attached to the mafia somehow and making payments to keep the shelter protected. Which technically, in a way, we kind of are, but at the same time, Not like he thinks. And I'm afraid I've truly broken that boy. I don't know what else to do with that. There is the fact of what they're saying is, do we wait till tomorrow to get Vivi free, or do we attempt to do so tonight so that they take that pawn off the table?
The door burst open as you're speaking. Victoria pulling Sophia through into the office. Felix bringing up the rear. Sophia knows the back way out, down through the morgue and out the tunnel. Victoria doesn't, only following Sophia's directions. Is there anything that she's saying in the moment?
You may want to, as they say, GTFO at this point.
Pedro Rossellini, Victoria says, her sister says, I'm not quite sure how to open this secret entrance. Would you be so kind?
What happened to y'all piecing out and leaving us to our own devices, and then you come running back in here? What the fuck is going on?
I mean, if you prefer, I can leave you to your own devices. Forget what I said. By all means, stay here and let the giant spiritual entity that is coming to destroy you. I am fine with that.
Alright, everyone, let's go. Let's follow the sound advice that we have been given.
Fine, but you know what song is playing in my head right now? That Katy Perry, you're hot then you're cold, it's yes then it's no.
I will look over at Hess. Like, does she mean that thing that wants to protect me, or is this something else? I don't.
The thing that wants to protect you, but the thing that might not be considered smart enough to know what's a threat and what's not a threat.
Whatever it is not here to give hugs and presents.
All right. Well, I guess stash that, and let's go.
As you all hustle to leave into the shelter, to make your way down through the morgue and out the secret exit, there's a calm that falls over you as you break past the threshold of the shelter itself. The flame in your hands, in the bedpan that you're using to transport it, grows brighter. Yet the feeling of dread grows considerably less inside the shelter, inside the actual haven, the secret and heart of the shelter, the reason for the shelter coterie. There is a safety inside the boundary of the shelter proper, the shelter's haven proper, that is not accessible and not any protection outside of it. Close doesn't count in this regard. You literally have to be past the threshold. The moment you reach past the threshold into the, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, closed and shuttered former hospital, there is a sense of safety and security. There's also a feeling of strength that, just calling it what it is, Sophia knows that she is not attuned to the shelter. But even with the trickle of energy flowing into her from St. Jerome's, this feels the most like home she's ever had. And while Miriam has never had the opportunity of having a place that was her own, that was not surrounded by her artwork, there is a strange kinship she now feels to the shelter. And then you hear it. The The sound of 100,000 legs crawling over stone. The tick, 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 tick. Crawling all over the external of the shelter. And a scratchy, not human voice. As if understanding intent without the ability to understand English granted but one word, or almost word, a statement of its intentions for some. And anyone with an occult of one, an understanding of boundaries and circles of protection, realize that as long as the shelter itself, as long as the hidden haven of the shelter's coterie actually has a boundary, that through whatever pact Miriam formed with her sacrifice, she is in fact, and you all are in fact, safe inside the boundary. With that realization sitting there for you all, and tomorrow yet to come, I'd like to thank you all for a lovely episode, and I will see you guys next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Not all.